And I want to welcome Professor Sangeeta Gupta, sorry. Yes, there you are. Thank you very much. So Sangeeta Gupta is a senior scientist and head of the Botany Division at the Forest Research Institute in Dehradun in India. And you are going to tell us the fantastic and interesting history of the wood anatomy research in India. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marta. And good day to all of you. I hope I'm audible to all of you. So I start with my presentation today. The topic is History of Wood Anatomy Research in India. And I could get a very interesting photograph that you can see on the screen. And these are the stalwarts of wood anatomy in the world. I hope all of you can recognize them. He's Professor K.A. Chaudhary, sorry. Professor K.A. Chaudhary, then Barry Tomlinson, Sherwin Carlquist, and Bill Stern, the person who is after that index silurium, right? So all the wood anatomists can easily identify all of them. And here, basically, I want to focus upon Professor K. Chaudhary, who comes from India, and he's the torchbearer, basically the leading torchbearer of wood anatomy research in India. And he basically expanded the horizon of wood anatomy research in India. Okay, coming to the introduction. In India, from the cradle to the cremation pyre, wood has been an integral part of lives. And from home hearths to religious sacraments, wood is conspicuously present. In all Hindu weddings, you'll find sacred fire using only specified wood. When it comes to written records, in India, we have some 4 Vedas that dates back to 1500 to 900 BCE, and 18 Puranas, which are from 3rd to 10th century. They were written during that period, and they are considered as treasure trove of ancient religion, cutting of trees. All these basically they basically discourage cutting of trees. They have, there are mentions of a lot of sacred woods. Example of sandalwood is well known to all the people, but no information on wood anatomy in its present sense is available in these ancient texts. I could find one very interesting book, which was written in 5th century by the name Maya Matam. And this particular book talk about appropriate timber material for construction, selection of proper orientation, and they have divided trees into 4 categories: Nisar, Antahasar, Bahisar, and Sarvasar. Now, what they exactly meant by Nisar trees were the trees which were thick, however thick, but they did not have any core. That means they were talking of the hardwood, and there was no core in the, and the example they have given is ficus species. Then the second category that they have put is Antahasar trees. Now these trees had hardcore inside, but it was smaller in size. Then Bahisar trees, the trees that had hardcore towards outside. And then Sarvasar trees, example were Shoria, Acacia, Albizia, Tamarindus, etc. These trees have hardcore throughout the cross section. So these were basically recommended for construction purposes. Now, if I come to the wood anatomy research in its present sense, then it was started during mid-19th century in India. And this wood anatomy research went hand in hand with the establishment of Indian Forest Department in 1855, and that subsequently became Forest Research Institute, Dehradun, in 1906. And this is the place from where I come from. So the first book that was written in India was published in 1858, sorry, by the name was Timber Trees, but the main title was The Timber Tree, Timber and Fancy Woods, as also the Forest of India and Southern Asia. And this was written by Dr. E. Balfour. And in this particular book, he has mentioned about superficial appearance of timbers. Then came the second book in 1881 by J.S. Gamble by the name Manual of Indian Timbers. And I hope most of the wood anatomists know about this publication, Manual of Indian Timbers. Now, this was the first systematic account of the macrostructure, properties, and uses of 1450 species of Indian timbers. So this was the main publication that was started in 1881, and this was the second edition came in 1902, and the same was reprinted in the 1922. Under this Manual of Indian Timbers, information on properties and uses was gathered from locals. Okay, most of the knowledge comes from the local uses. So that shows that scientific knowledge already existed during that time, as right wood was used for the right purpose, for the as proved scientifically today. Then knowledge on tree identification through morphology also already existed, but a lot of local names were used. And in different regions of India, different names were used. So that basically was a bit of the problem but in this particular Manual of Indian Timbers, this book have all the local names that were there for that particular species. Then another classic book that came was in 1932 by the name Commercial Timbers of India, written by R.S. Pearson and H.P. Brown. This particular book contains description of 320 timber species. The anatomical data was collected by Sir H.P. Brown, assisted by Professor K.A. Chaudhary. And then anatomical illustrations were done by Engineering College. And then data on wood seasoning, mechanical properties, uses, durability, woodworking, distribution, identification were all taken from different departments of FRI. So this particular book has got a detail on not only on microstructure and of the woods, but it also talks about seasoning, mechanical properties, uses, durability, etc. Only problem with this book was that number of wood samples taken was 1, and within a species, variation was not accounted for. Then came the era of Professor K.A. Chaudhary in between 1929 till 1956, and he is supposed to be the lead torchbearer of wood anatomy research in India. He established wood anatomy labs. He wrote several books, over 100 publications, out of which 5 papers were published in Nature. And he did a lot of work on archaeological woods and fossil woods. Just to give you an overview of his publications, this is just a small list of his publication. Some papers were published in Nature. You can see these. And he was the person who coined the term initial parenchyma. So this is what was established during his tenure. The xylarium came into being, and it was also established by Gamble also. He was the person who collected the samples and established this xylarium. Then Professor Chaudhary basically established wood anatomy labs, and trained manpower was appointed that time. Then after this 1963 onwards, what had happened was a big, very mega project by the name of PL 480 was launched worldwide. And this was funded by US Department of Agriculture. In this, major work was done on wood quality variations in different provenances of both indigenous and exotic timber trees. And in this case, they were evaluated for their wood quality parameters. And then a lot of genetic tree improvement programs were launched for important timber trees because already by that time, the scarcity of timber was felt. So a lot of GTI programs were launched for important timber trees. And later also in-house wood quality assessment projects were taken up for species, provenances, hybrids, clones, etc. for so many species. We have worked on Dalbergia, Sisu, Eucalyptus, Morus, Melinas, Picomellas, Terminalias, so many acacias, both indigenous and foreign, or Melia. And of course, teak was one of the most sought for species. A lot of imported pines were planted here, poplars, and then a lot of tissue-raised plants were evaluated for their wood quality. Now, during this period, 1958 to 2000, it was felt that we really need a book that covers all Indian woods, and it gives a lot of information was required on microstructure, properties, and uses of all the woods, because till now we had limited information on Indian woods. Like in 1932, that commercial wood was talking about 320 species. Earlier, Gamble book was not giving microstructures. So this particular book came into being, and it's a 6-series book on Indian woods. And it talks about identification, properties, and uses, and this gives the entire information of Indian woods. And then we have a separate publication on the soft woods, that's the non-porous coniferous woods. Then came this wood anatomy information system, a computer-assisted wood identification system was developed. And then 145 standards related to timber were formulated. In 1979, we also got the scanning electron microscope, which led to the ultrastructure studies. So this is that 6-volume book by the name Indian Woods Identification, Properties, and Uses. And it started in 1958. The last one came in 2002. And this is under revision. We are shortly going to publish it, this volume 2. Now, besides identification or besides microstructure details being given in these books, in these publications, a lot of work was carried out on other areas as well, mainly on archaeological plant remains, on fossil woods, on indigenous substitutes of imported woods, then wood anatomy in relation to plant taxonomy. A lot of work was done in this area. Then resin and gum yielding tissues, the abnormalities of wood like tension wood and reaction wood, and all those things were covered. The anatomical variation in relation to growth conditions, then wood quality assessment of plantation timbers, anatomical studies in relation to pulp sheet properties for paper industry. Then ultrastructure studies was carried out using that electron microscope. Then writing of zonal timbers. Now in India, basically it's a big country, so we have very, very different type of vegetation all over India. So for each area, north, south, east, west, we had zonal timbers for the local users. Then wood anatomy in relation to wood utilization. Then another very classical work that was done at FRI in India, that was identification of bamboos from epidermal features of leaves and culms. Now you all know that bamboos are usually identified by their culm sheath and leaves, etc. But once the bamboo is cut and comes into the market, then how one should identify it? So this particular publication gives the epidermal features of culms based on which wood identification, of bamboo identification can be carried out. Then we basically developed a computer-assisted wood identification program or a software by the name Wood Anatomy Information System, WAIS. This particular software has got a database of 1,100 species, and this data is as per the International Association of Wood Anatomists feature list. IUFRO list has been followed for the database. Now this particular information system or the computer software that was developed has got all these features. It talks about feature details. The same list has been given here, so that along with the photograph, so that one can understand the feature. Then there are input forms, and the input forms contain wood anatomy database, wood images, both 3 planes, transverse, radial, and tangential. It has xylarium inventory. It talks about wood properties and wood uses. So all the information related to each wood sample, each wood species has been incorporated in this database. And then identification can be done through search, and another identification is through search order. In this case, what we have done is that if we are sure that the wood has come from India only, then the identification process becomes very, very easy. And we can go by this particular identification manual rather than going by the general one. Okay, so this is for general identification. If we are not sure whether the wood is coming from India or abroad, then we follow this. If we are sure that it's coming from India, we follow this particular thing and this particular module, and the thing is done very, very fast. Then we have query module in this, sorry. In this query module, one can always ask, basically generate what all features are basically related to each other, and things like that can be queried from this. Then reports can be generated for a species, genus, family, like that, and then classification. Now, besides Forest Research Institute, the other institutes that have been working on wood anatomy in India are Birbal Sahani Institute of Paleobotany, and they have been working since 1939, and they basically are focusing on fossil woods, and they have done a very, very good work on fossil woods. Then later, this Institute of Wood Science and Technology, which is a sister organization of Forest Research Institute, or my organization basically, but they basically are more into properties and uses of wood, and also at composite woods. Then we have other institutes like Kerala Forest Research Institute. They have done a very good work on bamboos and canes. And we have University of Madras, Karnataka. They have been working on bark anatomy and other areas related to wood quality assessments. Then again, University of Agriculture and Forestry, Solan. Then this Bilaspur Vishwavidyalaya, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, then Kashmir University, then Baroda University. All these people mainly are working on wood quality assessment of different plantations. Now, coming to the present scenario, we are basically engaged in this wood anatomy research. Basically is being disseminated to all forest managers, to postgraduate students of forestry, wood science and technology people, and cellulose and paper students, and as well as industry people. A lot of trainings are being organized to disseminate this knowledge of wood anatomy. And there are courses running on field identification of timbers, on fiber analysis of paper, and also on bamboo anatomy. And publications from India, basically, we have more than 60 reference books published on wood anatomy, and nearly 1,000 research papers, bulletins have been published. Basically, this wood identification consultancies are being taken up for all these departments, be it defense, customs people, all these CITES woods and all, just because today we have this microstructure details of all the species of India. So all these, the department basically, that research basically helped us to identify these CITES listed wood, and basically stop the export of these woods. And then a lot of national test houses, forensic labs, railways, housing corporations, sports authority, all these people, they all need wood identification. And based on the publications that have been done in India, this wood identification can be carried out for all these departments. And basically, we get a lot of VVIP visits to our xylarium, which is one of the best xylarium in India. And you can see right from the very beginning, 1962 till today, we get a lot of visitors coming to see our xylarium or the amazing wood biodiversity that we have in India. And because of that, recently our project has been approved on Demonstration Center for Amazing Wood Biodiversity of India. And very soon we are going to formulate this, make this, and it will be a showcase showing the amazing wood biodiversity of India. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation on the history of wood anatomy in India. Amazing how many species you have, of course. So I'm also very surprised to see the ancient text. I mean, the descriptions went back also in ancient texts. I don't know if someone would want to ask something, then I would allow one question. Otherwise, we need to move on.
Hi.
Howard Rosen,
Hello.
yes, now I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yes. Dr. Gupta, it's good to see you after all these years.
Thank you very much, sir. Good to see you also.
Thanks for your interesting and extensive talk on the research that India has done on wood anatomy. My question is, with such great research done, what do you think is the most important thing for the future to be done in research in wood anatomy in India?
Basically, we need to do lot many works on this wood quality assessment, because we are into plantations. Lot of plantation work and genetic tree improvement programs are going on in India. So that aspect is going to be a major area. And of course, all these academic things like archaeological woods and fossil woods, all these are going to remain. And we also need to, see the Indian substitutes, or say a lot of foreign woods are coming to our country. So we need to basically find out what all can substitute our Indian woods, because now we cannot cut Indian woods. We hardly have them in the market. So all foreign woods are coming to in our country, and we need to see how they can be used and for what all purposes. So that users part has to be, because a lot of wood is coming and people are used to of using Indian woods. Like the recent case of Dalbergia sisu is there. It has been listed in CITES, and now the handicraft industry is making a lot of hue and cry that they need a substitute of Dalbergia sisu. So now we basically have to search and do a lot of work to find out an Indian substitute of Dalbergia, a foreign substitute of Dalbergia sisu. Lot of woods are coming, so maybe something works for the handicraft department. So those kind of works need to be done a lot. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Professor Gupta.